Well, I think it's slim, but it's not none the way it was before the trade. So I think the trade helped their title chances because now they have a chance to actually guard somebody. They have a chance to not have Giannis average 40-plus against them as he did in last year's regular season and then ruin them in back-to-back losses to end their season in Game 6 and 7, including on their home court in Barclays last year. I think they're a wing short, Brew. However, I don't think they can be dismissed because NBA history tells us if you have a guy who is in the discussion for the best player in the league, and I think Giannis is the best player in the league, but some people would argue Durant, and he is certainly in the discussion, then unless your team is just totally, absent of any other talent, you've got a shot. And they're not absent of any other talent. They'll have Kyrie for part of the time. I think Ben Simmons will fit well. I might not be as bullish on him as Wilds is, but I think he'll fit well and play well. I think their biggest issue is going to be, pardon me, a total lack of cohesiveness early in the postseason when they're going to be up against good, who are they going to play in round one, Brew? Miami? Chicago? Milwaukee? Philly? Right. Other than Philly, all those teams have tremendous cohesiveness throughout the year. Because of the 11-game losing streak, Brew, they are going to be against good teams the moment the playoffs begin. I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they're at risk of missing the playoffs. And I think any team with Durant's scary. But I don't think they have a great chance at all. But I think they have a greater chance than they did before the trade.
They're not winning the championship this year. And Patty Mills said the right thing, 100% I believe. Of course he does. I don't. And I disagree. Look, obviously we know all the things that went on behind the scenes between Durant and James Harden. Harden obviously wasn't happy with Kyrie being in and out of the lineup. So I get that there were issues there, but I still think that team on paper was better than this team on paper this year. So I don't give the Nets much of a chance at all this year of winning the championship. Going forward, perhaps. We'll see how Ben Simmons fits in. But, Nick, there's so many questions about them, starting with Kyrie Irving and the home games. When they play home games and Kyrie is not available, we'll see if they change the mandate in New York City. But for now, he's not available. And when he's not available, they got one scorer. Now, I know Seth Curry is a good fourth option or something like that, but they've got one big-time scorer in home games. And yes, Ben Simmons is a great defender, and that will improve their defense. But don't be mistaken, Nick. They're not going to be a phenomenal defensive team. They're not going to be what Philadelphia was with Ben Simmons defensively. Because he also had Matisse Thybulle, and he had Joel Embiid backing him up. Okay, so they're not going to have the offense to make up for losing James Harden when Kyrie Irving isn't there in home games. Secondly, the huge question is also Ben Simmons, Wilds. Again, Patty Mills being a good friend. They're both from Australia, being a good teammate. I'm going to say this, though. When has Ben Simmons ever been hungry? Was he hungry at LSU when he decided to sit out the second part of the season and they didn't even make the NCAA tournament? Was he hungry for the first several years of his career when he never put in the time to develop a jump shot? No. So is he hungry now? Is he chomping at the bit to get on the court? I don't see it. And I think he's a very good player. But this notion that he's hungry, if he was hungry, he might have played in Australia for the Olympic team last summer and worked on his game rather than doing it by himself in the gym. So I just think that there are big questions, not about Ben Simmons as a fit, Wilds, but Ben Simmons mentally for this season. Maybe next year he'll come back and be great, but this season I got questions about where his head's going to be at.
I think that's a totally fair concern. I'm optimistically, perhaps blindly optimistically, rooting for Ben, and I think that Patty Mills unlocking some potential in Ben is something that I'm relying on. If he needs to be hungry, like losing $20 million would make me a little bit hungry. If I looked at my bank account, all of a sudden I was negative $20 million, I'd be like, oh, I didn't even know I had that. But negative $20 million would sort of light a fire underneath me. Nick, you were talking about the lack of consistency. And I could see if the Nets get knocked out of the playoffs that all of the press conferences were like, you know what? We needed more time together. We've got to go. The future is bright, but we need more time together because guys are in and out of the lineup, specifically Kyrie. But the interesting thing that happened yesterday is both Silver and New York City Mayor came out and questioned the logical nature of the ordinance where unvaccinated players from visiting teams are allowed to play in Barclays, but Kyrie isn't. Kyrie has also echoed this a long time, hoping that it would change. There didn't seem to be a ton of movement on it, but at least there was a discussion where there didn't really seem to be a discussion under the previous administration. Let's say, and I don't want to get into like whether or not it should happen, let's say the mandate is overturned and Kyrie's allowed to play. Would you still keep the Nets at 0% of winning a championship if you get Kyrie in all the games?
No, well, I don't have, to be clear, I don't have it 0% now. I said it's very slim.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think you can, I think Kevin Durant's a great enough player, and now I don't think, I had him at 0% before this trade, because as great as you are, if you allow 130 a game in the playoffs, I don't think you can win a title. And now I think the defense is better, and I didn't think they liked each other. No, and I think you're right, Wilds. There does seem to be some momentum towards this potentially, the rule changing. Because, listen, I am as pro-vaccination as anyone you will ever meet, but I will admit, the same thing Adam Silver admitted, and he seems very pro-vaccination, this mandate doesn't, it seems illogical that you can be unvaccinated and play in Barclays as long as you're not a Nets player. Like, that just, on its face, pardon me, seems a little odd. But here's the issue, Brew. And this is an issue for the Nets this year, and it's an issue looming over the Nets moving forward. What are you going to get out of Kyrie even if he's there every game? He's been fine this season. He's scoring 24 a game when he plays, but his efficiency is the lowest it's been, of his healthy career in at least 7 years. You could argue since his first couple years in the league. I don't know what level of buy-in is weird, because I do think he wants to win. I do think he clearly loves basketball. But I also think that he has, I think he has a lot of emotions pulling at him as far as what's most important in his life. And that's fair. I'm trying to be nice here, but also be honest. Like, I don't think Kyrie Irving wakes up every morning and is like, what is it going to take to win the title? I think Giannis does. You know what I mean? I think Joel Embiid at this point does. And so, I think even if Kyrie's there every game, Brew, I think that is not as big of a benefit as one would have thought. And when I've talked about the Nets defense, Broussard, and I'd love your take on this quickly, you mentioned this year the defense was getting better. They were, whatever they were, they had ranked. Yeah, because Kyrie wasn't playing. And then Kyrie came back when he did, and it's like, oh, okay, I recognize that Nets defense. And so I think even if Kyrie's there every game in the postseason, which, by the way, still wouldn't be there if they're playing the Raptors at any point for those road games. That's a whole nother story. So, if they play the Raptors right now, he's eligible for none of the games. I don't know how much that moves the needle. I just don't know right now how much Kyrie Irving moves the needle of a team's championship odds.
Well, look, what you and many others, and I'll even admit this, when we look at the Nets now and we say, wow, they fit really well. They got this awesome scorer in Durant. They got a secondary scorer in Kyrie who's awesome. They got Ben Simmons who can defend, and you can play him at the dunker spot. You don't have to have him on the perimeter because there's no Joel Embiid there. When you look at that, you say, oh, great. But off the paper, the questions abound. And you're right, Nick, about Kyrie. Because of the vaccination, we're all focused on that. But let's say this wasn't even an issue. We still would have questions about Kyrie. I mean, maybe Kyrie would have taken another week or two off hiatus like he did last year, right? Maybe something else would have come up like it always seems to do with Kyrie. So, yeah, that's a fair point, Nick, that even when he's back, you're going to be like, okay, is everything okay? Is this going to work out? So there's just question marks all over the place.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.